Hello, I'm Dr. Steve Hassan. It's August 27th, and the summer has flown by. And man, oh man, is there a lot going on as usual, but I'm welcoming everyone to my live stream. I think we're doing 5 different platforms today, wanting to get the word out about freedom of mind, my Substack, Stephen Hassan, my YouTube, Dr. Stephen Hassan, and all the exciting interviews that I've been doing with really important people that the public needs to know about and their books. And this week we have Harvard's history professor Rebecca Lemov, who did a book called, I'm going to just read it, The Instability of Truth, Brainwashing, Mind Control, and Hyper-Persuasion. Very important book, I should say. I've known Rebecca for at least 15 years and actually given talk at her classes, and very excited to share her research that explains the history of brainwashing, MK Ultra, LSD, hypnosis, key figures, all the way up to Facebook and social media manipulation, emotions through personalized data, micro-targeting. Yes, it's a real thing, people, and we can't walk around pretending that being on social media is an innocuous experience, because it's not. And as many experts have said, if it's free, that means you are the product. The information of how long you spend on a site, what you like, what you don't like, even eye movement patterns in some cases, they're able to. There's some 5,000 data points on every voting American. I talked about how I had read Sarah Wynne Williams' whistleblower book that detailed how Facebook helped hack the 2016 election for Donald Trump. And I want to also comment that next week, and for those YouTube subscribers, we are videos of the interviews a week early, because we're trying to bring people in, subscribers, for special content. We have Ann Nelson, and Ann is an amazing person. She wrote the Shadow Network about the Council for National Policy. And if you've never heard of the Council for National Policy, you should look up my previous interview with Ann. This is a group of very wealthy right-wing extremists who have a think tank, who have been planning for decades on how to bring the liberals to bear so that they can assert their own worldview on the rest of us, including impose religion in their version of it on the rest of us, violating the separation of church and state. Well, Anne wrote a book, took her 9 years, about German resistance during the Hitler regime. And I personally have never heard that there were a lot of Germans fighting undercover at risk of their lives against Hitler to aid the Allies. That interview is now on my YouTube for subscribers only. It will be public next Monday. And we have Dr. Bandy Lee the next week after that, forensic psychiatrist who has been writing and editing books about the dangerousness of Donald Trump, and how what's missing is mental health experts like Bandy, like myself, having platforms to teach the public about how the mind works, how social psychology works, how neuroscience works. Because in the end, what we're with right now is an existential crisis where we are being bombarded with confusing, overloading messages that are making a lot of people more extreme, either on the on the right, making a lot of people feel hopeless, which is opposite of the freedom of mind message. We all need hope. We need to be able to visualize our goals of a positive future, to know our values, and to implement a positive contribution every day to feel fulfilled in the light of all militarization on the fascism and the dismantling of our economy and the funding of the police and the funding of vigilantes of ICE. And don't forget all those pardoned J6 violent coup protesters who are now, many of them, I imagine, are going to be making money for the US government to round up people who are critics of Donald Trump. So we're in a war, people. It is a coup. I'm still amazed that so many Americans don't understand the Russian influence. I want to cite Dave Troy's work on Project Russia. I myself wrote about Russia as being the main puppet master of Donald Trump, having brought him to Moscow in 1987, where he was recruited by the KGB, according to former KGB official Yuri Shvets, who I did a two-part interview with alongside Craig Unger, who has really documented the Russian connection, House of Putin, House of Trump, and American compromat. So wake up, people, and these words that Trump is being critical of Putin, don't believe them for a second. This is part of the information confusion technique. Just look at how he behaved with Putin when he allowed a war criminal to be on American soil in Alaska. And by the way, I'm hearing scuttlebutt that Putin wants Alaska back again. So guess what? All of those Alaskans who voted for the GOP, you may be Russians in the future. No, I hope not. That's a terrible wish. Ignore that comment. But there was details about how Americans were caught working in Greenland for the Trump administration, because I guess Donald Trump still wants to take over Greenland, even though France made a deal with for minerals and other precious things in Greenland. Folks, we have a world coup happening here. And what's different from my perspective is that Americans, we weren't raised in an authoritarian mind control cult like Putin was under the Soviet Union. The Russian people have had czars, they've had Stalin, they've had other dictators. So they're kind of conditioned over many, many years to think it's normal. Americans are seeing since January 20th a very rapid fascist regime, systematically defunding critical things, attacking critics, um, all of the playbooks of authoritarian mind controllers. And the goal is to terrorize people, to make them afraid, to make them self-censor, to make them fawn and go along with whatever is happening. Oh, and Focus Lady just became a member. Thank you so much, Focus Lady. Yeah, you're going to get a lot out of the Ann Nelson interview, and it will be public on my Cult Conversations podcast as well as on the video. And I want to make an appeal for people to come join my Substack and become a member, $5 a month. It's going to help us a lot because honestly, I have a lot more I want to teach. I still need to get back to that book on how to talk to people who had been radicalized into MAGA. And for that matter, that are radicalized into Maha. I don't know if you saw the recent article we posted on Substack about RFK Jr. and how this was a deliberate infiltration of the liberal left to bring them to what we know now as fourth generation psychological warfare, where they distrust experts, anti-vax, for example, raw milk, just going against experts, going against democratic institutions for to render people more susceptible to indoctrination to the big Führer, to the head dictator. So I want to talk about the crypto issue for a minute. Oh, I see, Focus Lady. Have you interacted with the author Virginia Eubanks? Wrote a book called Automating Inequality. No, I'm not. But this is a good moment because I do hear good suggestions from my listeners and my followers. Please email us at center@freedomofmind.com or have authors of good books to email mediarelations@freedomofmind.com. We have a bunch of recorded interviews already that have been sitting in the hopper, but I'm dedicated to putting out more and more information, and I might be doing more live streams, especially if we can, access people who have not known that I am a former Moonie. I got recruited at age 19 at Queens College, got deprogrammed, was in the room with Sun Myung Moon when he talked about infiltrating the US government and amending the Constitution to make it a capital offense. I was there. I fasted for Nixon before my deprogramming. Let's see. Cami says, Kristin on Substack, could you please give a few specific examples of how Trump uses NLP? I've heard you talk about this and try to listen for it, and I'm not quite sure what I'm looking for and would like to understand. Thank you. So, Kristin, have you seen my videos I've done on NLP or on my YouTube station, Dr. Stephen Hassan? I would definitely encourage you to start there. I have other videos. I have a 3-hour workshop I taught on hypnosis to an International Society of Hypnosis conference in Bremen, Germany in 2012. But to answer your question, I literally just recorded a video this morning about using a clip of Donald Trump saying how he's not a dictator, people want to be a dictator, and just repeating the word over and over again. So I was explaining one of the principal techniques, which is confusion. And if you want to brainwash people, you have to disorient them and confuse them first, make them uncertain of what is real, what's true, what's reality. And the person who's the hypnotist needs to talk with confidence. I know more than the generals. I know more than the economists. And when I do the voice, people say, hey, you could be a cult leader, Steve. And I'm like, not in a million years. I've already had my inoculation. Thank you very much. And don't want to be a right-wing fascist or control people at all. But I want to explain that what NLP is a system based on the work of Milton Erickson. Milton was a psychiatrist who revolutionized the field of hypnosis. Before Milton Erickson, it was known as a direct suggestion approach. Mesmer and other hypnotists would give commands in an authoritative voice, and some people obeyed and some people disobeyed. And so what people were being told was the people who obeyed were hypnotizable, and the people who didn't obey were not hypnotizable. Erickson said people are going out of altered states of consciousness all day long if you just pay attention. And if you really use words properly, you can get people to make images in their minds or movies or elicit emotional states or elicit memories and such. And so uh, John Grinder and Richard Bandler studied Milton Erickson. And I should add, Milton Erickson was consulted by the CIA for MK Ultra. And in a chat, former law professor emeritus Alan Shefflin did with me for a clinical hypnosis textbook, he cited Alan Dulles, the first CIA director, as saying of all the MK Ultra stuff, the thing that worked was hypnosis, by the way. In any case, back to NLP, if anyone has seen The Vow about the Nexium cult, they were using NLP. In fact, the president was trained by Tad James, who was a disciple of Richard Bandler, into how to use NLP. And I'm not recommending people go out and take NLP courses because you don't need to, but there's enough information out from myself and other people to understand that if some stranger is saying nonsense to you, don't try to make sense of it. Think of it, is he trying to trick me and get me to go into trance to make sense of the nonsense, or the saying I'm not a dictator and saying people want a dictator and I want to be a dictator, not a dictator, over and over again. So understanding how your mind works and understanding that you need to take responsibility for controlling your own mind and making up your own decisions. And another comment, I'm going to go off on a little of a riff. I'm seeing more and more people defer their creativity and their critical thinking and judgment to chatbots like ChatGPT and such, to the point where they're having relationships with their chatbot, thinking that it understands them instead of understanding. This is algorithms and programming that is getting more and more sophisticated because it's learning from you by your reaction responses. And a technique that these chatbots have been taught, which I first learned in 1980 when I first learned NLP, is something called mirroring. What is mirroring? It's a technique where you want to repeat to the person what you just heard, or you want to act and be a mirror behaviorally for how their body posture is, because unconsciously, when someone's mirroring us, we think they're us, or we think that they're friendly, versus someone's using a technique to get inside of our minds and possibly our bodies. By the way, do you know that there are people who charge money um, for workshops for how to rape people covertly using NLP and hypnosis? If you didn't know it, know it. And if you didn't know, Andrew Tate was teaching hypnosis to his boys, how to traffic women. I've watched actual video documentaries about Andrew Tate. What a bad actor he is. Let's see, back to Focus Lady. What is the role of personal needs for absolute certainty driving people into cult systems? And do you think that expanding tolerance for uncertainty can help people avoid cult recruitment? Great comments. So there's a fantastic book by Burton called Uncertainty. And I have an allergy to people who are certain. It automatically makes me curious. Why are they so certain? And when I did my master's, my second master's and my doctoral dissertation, I learned how important it is, if I want to be a scholar, to understand that nothing is simple. Nothing is black and white, all or nothing, good versus evil. And when you're reading someone's peer-reviewed journal article, you need to understand, what are the inherent biases, what's the background of the researchers, were they looking to confirm their suspicion, or are they actually doing good science? And I really want to encourage people to check out a book by Adam Grant. And if you have never heard of Adam Grant, he's a an organizational psychologist at Wharton's, a great podcast. And he wrote a great book called Think Again. And I'm just going to relate a true story from the beginning of the book with one of the most famous um, uh, Nobel Prize winning psychologists in the world, a man named Daniel Kahneman, who, with Tversky, although he died, and they don't give Nobels to deceased people. He wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, where he talked about how humans have an unconscious automated system one thinking. We do shortcuts all the time. And then we have system two thinking, which is much slower and more deliberate, where we're looking at data and analyzing things. And Adam Grant starts the book talking to Kahneman about how one of his major theories had been debunked, basically. And Adam said, "What do you think about the fact that your theory has been shown to be not true?" And Daniel Kahneman said, "I'm delighted." And Adam Grant said, "How could you be delighted? It was one of your major theories." And he said, I separate my ego from my beliefs and my teachings. I just want to pursue truth. And I'm sharing this story with you. Pardon me. I'm sharing the story with you because we really want to adopt a curious, open-minded perspective, but also not give up our critical thinking and challenging things that we hear and such. But when someone is unwilling to consider that maybe what they're believing is incorrect, or there's a better interpretation, that's a closed system. That's a closed mind. And I want people to be vibrant and growing and creative and open to other points of view. Let's see, we have Deedster Skeeter. It looks like the National Guard deployed to the NLA are from Republican-led states. Do you think it may actually be a positive thing, and that many will discover they are being used for a farce? I'm hoping, but I want to say, I said months ago, start talking to your family and friends who are in the military. National Guard, Coast Guard, Navy, Army, Air Force. Ask them the question, will you follow the Constitution and the rule of law, or will you follow a fascist if you were given orders to shoot unarmed Americans? And when I said it 2 months ago, people thought I was being an extremist, but I know the playbook, and I listen to historians like Timothy Snyder and Ruth Begiat and Ann Nelson and other people. And there's a playbook. And Hitler learned from Mussolini. I know that much. Didn't make up this stuff, and Trump and his ilk in Russia are getting instructions from Putin and from Russians. I've said publicly that Trump's chief of staff, Susan Wiles, was a paid lobbyist for Putin. And she was largely responsible for his election the first time in 2016, which was a hacked election, because now we know that Brad Pascal was working with Facebook using stolen data on many millions of Americans to drive them to either not vote for the Democrats or to vote for Donald Trump. Let's see. Kristin on Substack asks one follow-up question, if you wouldn't mind. Since hypnotists say some people aren't or aren't hypnotizable, do you think that's true? And if so, what do you think makes the difference? Great question. I think unless someone is psychotic or schizophrenic, they can be hypnotized. It largely depends on how sophisticated the person is, who's the operator, who knows hypnotic methods and techniques. But I do want to comment on a big lie. A big lie. And for those of you who've seen stage hypnotists, you've heard this lie. And the lie is that you can never do something when you're hypnotized that you wouldn't ordinarily agree to do. Bullshit. And pardon my cursing, but I really wanted to do it for emphasis. People can be made to do things that completely violate their conscience, their values, in hypnotic trances, if the operator is sophisticated and knows how to work the person. So the notion that you could never be hypnotized if you don't want to be, I just don't agree with that. I can tell you that I'm very educated about hypnosis, and I do a lot of self-hypnosis, and I've seen professional clinical hypnotherapists over decades, as well as attended thousands of hours of workshops with the top people in the world. And I know when I'm going into trance. So I have an unconscious alert system going on, a protector, if you call it. I have a protector that says, do you really want to go into trance, or do you want to not into trance? And if I don't want to go into trance, I stand up, I walk out of the room, or I put some cold water, or I hit the pause button. Because, by the way, I help people get out of mind control cults, and I coach family and friends who have a loved one who's been radicalized. And I'm frequently asked to help someone who's been hypnotized by someone. And if there's a audio or a videotape, part of my preparation is to listen to it and understand what are the key techniques and the words. And I hit the pause button because I want to stay above going into the trance, or I want to stay what's called meta, so that I am separate from what's happening over there. I'm trying to say, as skilled as I am and experienced as I am, don't trust myself to go into trance with people who are strangers, people who don't have mental health training. I'm very careful about my mind. Let's see, Claire Jacobson, what is crypto and what does it have to do with cults? Why would Trump push crypto? What's in it for him? Thank you for asking that. So when I first heard about crypto, and I heard it described that, for example, Bitcoin was created by some named person with a Japanese name, but we don't know who it is, and described how, there's a set number of coins that are basically not physical, but digital, and you have to bring more people to buy into it, and that will drive the price up. And this is multi-level marketing cults. This is pyramid scheme. Somebody has a great idea, usually a person with a lot of money. They get other people to buy in. A lot more people buy in, and then they cash out and make a fortune, and everyone loses money. That's that's why it's illegal to have a pyramid scheme. And so what's crypto about? Well, what I learned and what I understood, because I understood Russia wanted to destroy the United States of America just as the Soviet Union fell, and the Russians largely blamed America and the CIA for helping it fall apart. What I came to understand is that the Russians, the Chinese, I'll add, who are in alliance with Russia, they don't want the US dollar to be the world currency anymore. Let this sink in. The dollar has been the gold standard, so to speak, for money. And people have been investing in the United States, buying bonds for a really long time because it was considered such a safe investment. Well, if you want to destroy the United States and its hegemony in the world, defund US aid, and attack the Fed's system as an independent agency to regulate monetary policy, we see Trump doing that, and get people to buy crypto. And there was a law that was passed with stable coin that is, as I understand it, I'm not an economist, my thing is psychology. But as I understand it, what's happening with crypto is the Trump family is going big time into crypto, wanting to drive everybody out of investing in America and the US dollar into crypto, so that the tech bros, the Peter Thiel put Vance in as the vice president, Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, they have their own agenda for world domination using the internet and social media and satellites and spaceships. And they're pushing a whole transhumanism, accelerationism, long-termism agenda. I strongly recommend go to my Substack, Stephen Hassan, and read my blog with Greg Epstein and his book Tech Agnostic, and listen to the video or listen to the interview, because Greg is the human chaplain at MIT and Harvard, and the book says that big tech is the new world religion and these ideologies of these billionaires, and he doesn't believe in them, and nor do I, by the way. So crypto is bogus, but they were the largest funders of this last election. There's a lot of money being thrown to destroy the US economy and the US dollar. And they want us to go to digital Chinese currency. That's the push, as I understand it. I'm not aware Russia has anything close to what China wants to do. And China is really the long game, and they want Russia to do a lot of the dirty work so that they can take over. Let's see, Jane the Message. I was curious, do you think your neurodevelopment at age recruitment was an actor? Yes, I was 19. I was on the cusp of adulthood. I was still a teenager. My girlfriend dumped me, and three women flirted with me from the Moonies, and they lied their faces off. They said that they were students, and they were not. They said that they were not part of a religious group, which they were. And I was too cocky. If I can look back at the younger Steve, I had bicycled country. I was an extra honor student. No one taught me about cults. And I was the typical person, and I would say maybe at least half of this. I thought I was invulnerable to being brainwashed or mind control, because I thought it happens to weak, stupid, uneducated people. So it was not in there to even consider that I was being brainwashed, because I didn't understand what it was. And it wasn't until my deprogramming, where I asserted I wasn't in a cult and I wasn't brainwashed, my father cried and said, "How would you feel if it was your son who met a controversial group and dropped out of college and disappeared from your life?" And I thought from his perspective, and I was like, yeah, I could see how you're worried about me. So I wanted to prove to my family I wasn't brainwashed. And during my deprogramming, I learned about Chinese communist brainwashing and lifted 8 criteria for how to evaluate whether a group is doing brainwashing. And that's when my brain started to kick into gear again after 2.5 years, and chronic sleep deprivation, I would add. Is there research on the intersection age called vulnerability? I'm not sure what's out there now, but I can tell you a lot of people get recruited in what I refer to as situational vulnerability, which is part of the living experience. In other words, everybody loses a loved one. In my case, it was a grandparent who died first, and which is very common. Some people lose a parent, some people lose a sibling, some people lose a best friend. And so, death of a loved one, breakup of a relationship, that was my vulnerability, or divorce, graduation, moving to a new city, state, or country. So there's lots of situational vulnerabilities. The key is not just um, letting people know everyone's vulnerable, but I developed the influence continuum and the bite model of authoritarian control, so people could have a weight reality test for themselves by looking at the criteria on the behavior control and information control and thought control and emotional control. And having said that, I want to add, we're doing a new scientific study at bitemodel.com. It's free, it's anonymous. We now have a question survey. Doesn't apply at all, and it applies a lot. And a amended 40 question one with asking for feedback, because we really want to come up with a scientific way to evaluate on the influence continuum what's healthy influence. You get a low number. Authoritarian influence, you get a high number. So let's see, Margaret Jones, what are some signs that someone has been pulled into cult-like thinking without realizing it? Great question. So my experience is family and friends are the first to notice something's different. The person who is very introverted becomes extroverted. The person who wasn't political is talking about politics. The vegetarian is now eating meat, or the meat eater is now a vegetarian. Something fast, some radical personality change. And what the worst thing you can do, or the least effective thing you can do, is say, are you in a cult? Or are you being brainwashed? Because if they are involved with a cult, they likely will report you to whoever recruited them. And then you're the devil, or you're Satan, or you're someone dangerous that the person will be encouraged not to trust or ever see alone in. The best strategy if someone has a radical change is to be curious, ask questions, ask how they learned about it. Was there a person? Was it someone beautiful that they fell in love with? Like, did you watch a video online? Be curious, ask questions, non-judgmental questions. Ask if they would share what was important to them. And ask them if they're familiar with the influence continuum of ethical to unethical. And I did a TEDx talk, How Can I Know If I've Been Brainwashed? And in it, I outline a reality testing strategy that I've found and developed to help people. And it starts with taking a time out from whatever you're into. So if someone has made a change, ideology, religion, politics, therapy, whatever, large group awareness training, multi-level marketing group, or with a boy, their girlfriend, and they're changing how they dress and how they talk and how they interact, and won't do things that they always love to do. Encourage the person to take a time out, step back, learn about models of brainwashing and mind control. And in the TEDx, I talk about Lifton's model and model. Then seek out critics and former members and get another opinion. And when you're in a mind control cult, you're not allowed to think negative thoughts, and you're told not to interact with any negative information. Fake news from Donald Trump. Anything that he doesn't like is fake, and anything that he likes is the truth. And then you have to reflect back on your first exposure. Did you have informed consent? Did you know? Like, I like to ask people who are in MAGA, what's your first memory of Donald Trump? And they'll often talk about The Apprentice. And what was your first impression when you saw him? And they'll typically say, I thought he was a blowhard, or I thought he was an asshole, or I thought he was a misogynist or a bully, whatever. And I'd be like, okay, that's interesting. Tell me more. And then walk me through how you came to the place where you started taking him serious as a politician. And the goal of interacting with someone who's been brainwashed or mind control isn't to persuade them with facts or information. It's to empower them to think for themselves, to reflect, to have models to compare and contrast their own experience with. And people will exit themselves. And I'm telling you, there are millions of people right now who have serious doubts about Donald Trump, but they're afraid to tell anybody. They're afraid that their relatives may say, I told you so, and wag their finger, or they're afraid or ashamed of what's happened. There are more and more brave people saying, I got snookered. I regret my vote. And we want millions of these folks to be saying that publicly, because there are millions of people who don't approve of militias and National Guard and no lack of court warrants and habeas corpus. They don't want the US dollar to fail. They don't want to bow to a war criminal, Putin, or help Netanyahu do such incredible violence and starve people intentionally. By the way, Netanyahu is in the cult of Trump under the religious right, by the way. And people forget there were 1 million Russian Jews that emigrated to Israel that have continued to listen to RT TV, and they were trained to be authoritarians as children. And so it's very normal for them to follow someone like Netanyahu and these messianic cultists who want the Mashiach back again. Give me a break. Let's see. Tim Jones, how can we protect our mental health when all of the news feels so overwhelming? Great question. So, what I want to say is you have the power to decide how much news you subject yourself to. And some people are on their phones listening to news, watching social media for 8 to 12 hours a day. That's not going to help your mental health and well-being. Sorry, because the brain. So when you want to brainwash someone, there are two major ways to take advantage. One is sensory deprivation, and people will start hallucinating when there's no inputs. So they'll be especially vulnerable to suggestion. But the most common way is, guess what? Overload. Throw so much at a person that their brain starts getting numb. They can't handle it. They can't process it. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people walking around psychically numb. And turn off your phone, man. Turn it off. Turn it off for a few days. Trust me, you'll still be alive. The world will still have news. And if you don't want to turn it off, limit yourself. Say you'll catch up on the news for 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon. Don't be on your phone late at night. Get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. That's what humans need, 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And so many people that I hear about are staying up all night scrolling. Like, turn off your phone an hour to 2 hours before you go to sleep. Listen to music. Take a warm bath. Do something pleasurable. And the way you create the conditions for your mind before you go to sleep is going to really influence how you sleep. And I've gotten to the point where I tell my clients I don't want to work after 8 p.m. because I've been going to bed early. I've been going to bed 10:30. And if I do a business consult at 9, I'm gonna be thinking about the case all night long. And I don't want that. I want to rest so that I can be fresh the next day. Let's see, Dallin Spackman, my friend joined the Moonies. She was living out of her car before, and now she has housing and a purpose provided by the cult. Her life is better now. What should I do? Very interesting. I don't know. I'm just a therapist who is a guy, and I like to give people choices and options. When I hear of people's stories, how they were beaten and tortured and abused in their childhood and got into a destructive cult, and now they're not being beaten and abused, I'm like, yeah, that's better, but it's not healthy and it's not ideal. But what should you do? Be their friend. Stay in touch with them. Let them know there's an exit if they decide that they want to leave the group. Encourage your friend to listen to interviews that I've done. There are many people who are born into the Moonies who are doing podcasts and lectures and things. And understand, Sun Myung Moon claimed to be 10 times greater than Jesus Christ, and the guy was a rapist. Not surprising, malignant narcissist, had a child out of wedlock, gambler, and involved with the Korean CIA and the American CIA. And now his 2 sons are in Pennsylvania with an AR-15 gun cult called the Rod of Iron Ministries.org. And they've been going around with Michael Flynn for the Rod of Iron Freedom Festivals, recruiting militias. So do I think the Moonies are healthy? Not in a chance. Do I recommend people get involved with mind control cults? No way. Let's see, David Kincaid, quick question. Will this conversation be recorded? Yes, we record all my lives. Go to Dr. Stephen Hassan is my YouTube. And while you're there, please be a subscriber and get access to some premium content. We're planning to do more. I'd love to share this with some younger people I know and who seem to be buying into the crypto ideas. Crypto makes no sense as there's no intrinsic value to crypto. Correct. I think it's all valued on the greater fool theory. That's what Bill Gates and some of the top economists, Buffett and others, have been saying. If you want to see America be destroyed, and you want to follow Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Zuckerberg and create a transhumanist android civilization, go into crypto. But I want money, tax money, to pay the police and fix roads and pay teachers and healthcare and things that we look to governments to do. Everything that I'm talking about comes from over 50 years of direct full-time experience. And I like to think at my age that I have common sense and that my values of human rights, which means women's rights, gay rights, trans rights, indigenous rights, children's rights, that we should be following the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And we should all be very clearly devoted to planetary survival. Like that should be the overarching goal. And all these fossil fuel corporations, the Kochs and all these countries, Saudi Arabia and Russia and Iran, etc., and the US, that want to keep us warming our climate, they're insane. We're killing our habitat. They're not thinking. They're not analyzing. They're not thinking of their children or their children. And for who are, have want to believe that Jesus is coming again and Jesus is going to remake the earth so that it's pristine again, wake up. Wake up. This is not biblical. Sorry. This is a fantasy you've been sold. Um, what can we do to help in the community people that seem brainwashed? Befriend them. Be warm. Ask their name. Share your name. Find common ground. Don't try to persuade them. Be curious. They'll ask you questions about yourself and then you can share. But serious people want not to be lonely. And this was one of the things that the cult of Trump is really paid on, was reaching out to people who felt disenfranchised, who never had voted before, never registered, to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. It turns out human beings, species, we're tribal. We want to be connected to other people. Our life is richer when we're connected to other people. We want to believe in something greater than ourselves. And with this, I want to emphasize, figure out your values, figure out your purpose. I grew up in a Jewish religious tradition that said tikkun olam, which is the concept that the world's broken and our job on earth is to help make it better and repair it a little bit. We don't fix it all, but let's make a contribution so we make the world a little better by the time we die than when we entered it. And I really want to encourage people to think that way, to think about improving others' well-being. And guess what? You feel good when you help other people. When you open the door for someone who's elderly, or help somebody walk across the street, or say a nice word, or do a smile, make somebody's day. It's really a worthwhile endeavor. I don't want to be an android. Thank you very much. I don't want to have sex with a robot. Thank you very much. I'm a human being. I like hugging other human beings. I like, knowing that we don't know. And I don't want to be with AI super intelligences. Sorry. And all the top people are saying, unless we can encode values to the programming of AIs, they may just extinguish us as a species that's destroying the earth. And when I've talked to AI startup CEOs and they saw my influence continuum graphic, they've said that should be in the architecture, that this is ethical, respect for individuality, conscience, creativity, love, informed consent, versus deception, manipulation, fear, guilt, dependence, obedience. Here's one. I'm a professional in the crypto industry. We're currently partnered with the UN. I don't disbelieve you. There are at least 10 cults I know who are currently partnered with the UN. Uh, doesn't give it credibility, unfortunately. It just means that you've spent a lot of time and money getting to know people and lobbying and recruiting. Just as there are many ways to use money for good or for bad, the same is true for crypto. I disagree. Unless crypto is regulated by good institutions, like they regulate other instruments that are investment instruments, I disagree. And there was a whole element, New York Times article from about Gregory Epstein's book Tech Agnostic, about the rationalists and how they were doing. Oh, I'm blocking on the term that Sam Bankman-Fried went to jail for, where he was rationalizing and justifying that we make a lot of money and we'll do good with that money from our profits. And if you're harming people, it doesn't, two wrongs don't make a right, in my opinion. And when people ask me what should the Democrats do, I've outlined the whole program, but it involves with educating people about how the mind works, how developmental psychology will healthy developmentally, understanding neuroscience, understanding undue influence, and having a methodology for evaluating if someone is harming and taking people's free will away and trafficking them. There are tens of millions of former members of authoritarian regimes and cults, and I want them to come out of the closet ready to share their experiences. A lot of people are ashamed and embarrassed to admit that they were in a mind control cult or that their family was like a mind control cult growing up. I can tell you, if you were beaten as a child, and I'm not talking about a little hand on the tush once or twice. I'm talking about with a wooden spoon, with a belt, with a paddle, with a whip. I interviewed Monty Mater, and father used a bullwhip on her once. That does trauma. That does mental harm to children, does not encourage them to grow up to be independent. It makes them fear authority and be dependent and obedient. It's the opposite of what we want. I'm going to leave with saying love is stronger than mind control, and putting others' best interests ahead of your own and doing good in the world is really a worthwhile endeavor. And people ask me, how could you be doing this for 49 years? I really get fulfilled by knowing that I'm helping others. And many of them have gone on to become mental health professionals and are helping more people. So think about contributing to the greater good in a positive way, and make friends with your neighbors, community. And please join my Substack, subscribe. Please join my YouTube, and be part of the Freedom of Mind community. And if you want to volunteer some time to help us promote our message on social media, or know of people who are influencers who know of our work and want to communicate with them, please do. That would really help me expand my reach. Thanks, and I'll see you next week. Take care.